Today, as I already said to you, it will be mostly about space exploration. I will make a very short recap of what we did, so just that we can feel all the pieces together. Now, I got this thing just because I wanted to have it, honestly. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it. I will try. I didn't rehearse anything, but I think that it helps me also maintaining a structure. We'll see. And I will start this way. Some of you already heard this from me in some private lessons, but I really want to share this example with all of you. Let's imagine that I, as a teacher, decide to enter you in a competition, in a very special competition, dance competition, okay? Everything is normal. We are in the hotel, we do our entry forms, we have to dress up, do our hair and makeup and everything. Ballroom, so international standard, let's say, right? Or even smooth. But the only special rule of this competition is that you cannot move, you cannot travel. So you have to stay with 2 feet planted on the ground. Now you cannot move your feet. You can do whatever you want, but you cannot take any single step, right? So when I ask you this effort to imagine this, you could find a little bit like what can I do then? Like if I cannot even make a step. Ballroom dancing, it's mostly about, traveling across the ballroom. And yet, when you realize how many things you can do properly by not moving at all, by not taking any step, there where you enrich your performance and your skills as a dancer. So, let's imagine that we are doing this competition with no steps. So, what's the very first element that you must have? So imagine there are judges, right? So they are judging you. They are judging you even if you're not moving. So the very first thing I will not ask you, I'll say, okay? And then we do interactive a little bit later. The very first thing that you need to be aware of in this kind of competition is your balance, home point, okay? So we have, so let's call it like no step comp. All right? My creativity is at the very maximum right now. So, very first thing that we need to have, balance, and I'll put home point. Because you remember, right, what is home point? Home point is this point in balance where I don't need to use any strength to stay in. Okay? If I am this way, right, I need to use some muscles to make sure that I stay. But if I find home point, some people sense it more in the middle of the foot, some people may feel that one on the toe. There is not a position on the foot, it's personal, all right? When I am on that position, I can stay like that pretty much forever, okay? So very first thing I have to do, when I go to this competition, I take my placement and I need to be clearly in balance. Okay, so like, would that be good to start? Probably not, because I'm already tensing up. All right, so I need to be in balance. Very first thing. Second thing that I can do. Anybody wants to say a second thing? Let's see. That I said that I wouldn't ask, but anybody wants to say what's the other thing? That sounds right. Very good. Posture. So the second thing is posture. Again, remember what we said last time. Every layer you add, you always need to sense home point again. So you cannot compromise the layer before, all right? So once I find I'll do diagonally this way, once I find my home point, then I need to sense my posture, and I have to confirm and double check that home point is still there. So I still don't need to use extra strength to support that. Okay, so I feel this very nice line. So, third thing, here usually we have this, when I do lessons and teach, this is usually the point where everybody mistake. Let's try to put importance. So we say balance, posture. Now, I have my feet slightly open just to allow a bit of movement. What can I do at this point? Anybody wants to dare? All right. Actually, that's kind of right. But let's do like this. Let's do the posture plus frame. Okay. Let's put it in the posture thing. Meaning I put my posture and then I put my frame. Same thing. Okay. So at this point, when I'm with my partner, we look like, hopefully, nice in that. So what we can do after that? I'm like this. Actually, you can tell me. So what can I do at this point?
Rotation.
Okay, so rotation is already space exploration. We'll see it later. There is something else before starting doing what we normally call as actions. There is something else that I can do.
Changing weight or balance.
Right, changing weight, I can take it. Changing weight, let's call it the way I like to call it, just because I'm the teacher. Balancing. Balancing, which is different than balance, okay? Balance is something pretty... Okay? And what is balancing? Balancing is the ability to keep sensing my home point in different locations. So, again, normally we experience this as a change of weight. So we are changing our weight across the surface of our feet. When I do this, we shall think that just our spine travels without any shapes, right? We just move our spine across the base of our feet. So at this point I have balance, I have posture and frame, and I have balancing. Okay? Now, at this point, there is something else we can do. Anybody wants to dare? Michael said rotation before.
Sway, shape.
Rotation, sway, shape. What, I want to say something else? I don't know.
3 plus 1. You're 3 plus 1 movement.
Right. Whatever it comes in your mind now, rotation, CBM, head action, whatever. Really everything that comes in your mind at this point, besides stepping, fits into one category, space exploration. Okay? So whatever we do, at this point is explore the space. Now, you remember as I said that you always need to make sure that you have on point. Every layer you add, you need to feel home point, okay? The same applies to the other stuff. So when I do posture and frame, I need to feel home point. When I do balancing, I need to feel posture and frame, and I need to feel home point. When I do space exploration, I need to feel balancing, space and posture and frame, and on point. And in this importance, in this order. If you guys do the other order, it's going to be wrong. And now I'll tell you why that's very important. If I am on the spot, let's say that I have balance, and let's say that I have posture and frame, right? But let's say that I don't have balancing. And now I create a space exploration that we describe normally as a rotation, okay, this way, without balancing. This action brings you off balance. Now this is an easy action, but realize that every time you do space exploration of every kind without balancing, that's going to lead to an out of balance or to an extra resistance or a tension in your body. So have you ever had a situation in which, I don't know, maybe I had, so I'll give my example, my teacher told me, okay, you have to do the drive, then you have to do the rotation, and then you have to do the sway. That's kind of why I was taught to do a natural turn or a feather step, right? What happens is that I do my drive, so naturally there is some balancing happening, right, because I have to change my weight. Then I do a rotation, but when I do that rotation, there is no change of my balance at all. I'm staying exactly where I was before. So at this point, I'm already falling. And then I have to move again. and stuff like that. So it's very important. It might sound like silly, but actually it's very important. If I want to create a space exploration that we describe as a rotation, it only makes sense if I'm doing some balancing. So if I'm rotating and still balancing, then that rotation can be organic and you don't fall. You keep feeling the balance. Plus, you cover more space, right? Because one thing is do like this, and one thing is do like that. Yeah, so with that action, you have covered more space. Okay, so the beginning of this lesson of today is to realize the order and the fact that you always need the previous element to make sure that it really works. If you are great at turning and swaying, but you don't coordinate that with your balancing, I get no use of that. I won't like it. So have you ever experienced some teacher saying like there is too much rotation, too much weight? Nowadays everybody just shape, and nowadays like there is no weight anymore, and it's just about shaping. Now they have a point, because the problem is we start working so much on our upper body action that we forget to relate that to the way we balancing. Once it's connected to the way we balance, and we'll do exercise later to actually have a feel of that. Now are just words, but you will feel that later. Then nobody's going to complain if you sway too much. Actually, they're going to like it. Because then you are going to sway in the amount that you can balance. So if I am doing a natural turn, right, now I know that I have to do a sway to the right. Can you relate to this moment, right? Now, if I do explore coronal space, and we will review this soon, as I do that transition of balance, I can only sway as much as I balance. When I cannot balance anymore, I don't sway anymore. So the problem comes when a person wants to sway, right, or to a lot without any sense of balance underneath. Again, let's set the priorities. This is going to be the order. So if I can have my baby here. Now we go to the competition, with the no-stepping competition. So what do? We do just one step to get together, all right? Let's say like this. We stay on both feet. We have a home point. We have a posture and frame. Now we start balancing. So you see, I'm not doing any action. And now as we start balancing, I start explore space. So you see, every action I do, every space exploration I do doesn't happen without me continuing balancing on the feet. Now I'll show you the one where I don't balancing, okay? Only because I'm doing exactly the same action, but because I don't keep balancing, she feels like she's being thrown away, and I feel like she's falling, and they say, why you push me, why you pull me, right? Does it sound familiar at all? So keep balancing and let that space exploration affect your balance. That creates balancing. If you do that, I can become even pretty extreme. It's difficult that we feel uncomfortable with each other. All right, so that's really, thank you, baby. That's really the very first thing to get. Because if you get this, even with what you already have, it should feel already much better, right? Now, we don't even go to the movement part for a moment, but just so that you know, when we go to the moving part and we start actually to travel, right? We have a sort of an upgrade of some of these elements. When I decide to travel, balancing becomes overbalance. So overbalance is the same of balancing. The only difference is that when I overbalance, I move in the outer space. And therefore, we have to do all the things that we did last time, the 6 types of steps. We can do drive, we can do rise, the moving leg has to coordinate, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all this stuff, go watch the video last time, I cannot repeat that. But balancing becomes overbalancing. So if I decided to go to the competition where I actually have to walk, so the normal competition, I still have balance on point, posture and flame, balancing transform into overbalance, and space exploration remains so. I do the same space exploration as I do when I'm still, but we need to do, so let's do like this. So now we move with movement. Let's do like this. Or we travel. Anyway, you understand what I mean. What happens to space exploration when we decide to actually travel? Space exploration at this point splits in two categories. Okay? There is how I explore space within myself, and where do I go with my overbalance? I repeat. When I overbalance, we spoke last time about the diagonals, right? If I decide to overbalance that way, in my head, I need to know in which space I'm going with overbalancing. So I'm going diagonally to the left. Okay, so my balance is traveling in that space. But while I do that, myself can explore other space. So I can travel, let's do it simpler. I can travel sagittally, right? But as my overbalance travels sagittally, I can explore transverse. I can explore coronal. So my balance is traveling in one direction, but my body is exploring space all around. You need to have this duality, because most of the time I notice when I teach some of you, or in general when I teach, that those two elements get combined. It's like, I have to go there, and then maybe I do a feather step, and I feel like I necessarily also my body has to project like that. But I can move there, and I can sense here, for instance. So in your brain, you need to have two types of space exploration once you move. Let's call it an internal space exploration, something that happens within our body, and an external space exploration, meaning where I move to. Does it make sense? I try to say the easiest I can. So let me do it. Let me write it like this. Internal and external. So on the non-step comp, we only have the internal. Okay? Of course, we can only do space exploration internally because we are not allowed to overbalance. As we overbalance, we need to experience the internal and external space exploration together. And to understand that they don't necessarily go similar way. They can be totally opposite. Like I can have an overbalance in one direction that is only one, simple, and then I can have an internal space exploration that goes all around. Once you start understanding this, you find that the girl usually experiences, the lady usually experiences that if I do a feather step and the space exploration is a little bit too big, I can feel, as a girl, I can feel thrown away. And that's probably because the man is more focusing on the internal space exploration rather than the external. So when I start sensing both things, so overbalance-wise, I'm just going that way. And I make it as simple as possible. But while I do that, I can explore all the space internally that I want. Okay, does it make sense? There is also the other problem. Maybe if you have a teacher, if it happens to you to have a lesson with a teacher that is a little bit older generation, right? The external space exploration is way more important than the internal. So back then, if you take a lesson with an English teacher, they don't care if you turn or sway or if you look beautiful. They care that your balance is going that way. So that you're overbalanced, that you're using your weight. That's the way they describe, that you guys flow in that direction. And so when they see stuff that are not coordinated, what they prefer to do, cut them off. Let's cut all this stuff and let's just focus on that. Okay? Some more modern teacher would say, focus on that, because this feather step looks like my grandfather is doing it, right? So you guys have to, and then if you are young enough, you can keep pulling and make it work. But I'm telling you already at 32, I cannot do it anymore. All right? So I hope that that's clear. The importance, and then the internal and external. Now, do you guys need this at all? Well, I'll do it again in the PDF anyway, so I'll cancel this because I go into some other stuff. You have to consider the space exploration as a sort of the internal space exploration is a sort of how you call this? I've missed the English word. That like if you use the spices on some food, you know, like that cannot be your food, okay? So your food is more your external overbalance and all the stuff I just canceled, of course, deleted. But that gives another touch and another opportunity for you to express and to look beautiful, because at the end, that's what we want when we dance, right? Okay, so let's try to understand what are the possibilities, right? Because you now understand there is no, nothing makes sense if I don't coordinate first my balance with it, okay? But now let's stay just on space exploration. You probably remember, we spoke about this. Exploration. We said that there are 3 + 1 dimension, right? Where the 1 is basically up and down, and the 3 are sagittal. I'm not sure it's double G or not. Anyway, the grammar, I've lost this. Is 1 or 2? Somebody knows? 1G? Okay, good. Transverse and coronal. That in easier words, or in more popular words, we can translate in frontal, rotation, and sway. I would really like that you get comfortable with these 3 words instead, because you remember I told you the only action we have in dancing is rotation. So if we start talking about rotation as an action, and the only action we can do is rotation, then it messes up with all this stuff. So I would, from now on, I'll refer to what you guys normally call rotation. I'll call it transverse, okay? So imagine always a star that pointed to what that is, because rotation will need this word for other stuff, okay? So, oh gosh, I wanted to bring a ball today to show something. I forgot the ball. Whatever. Okay, so let's talk about this 3 + 1. Imagine to have the ball that I forgot. So we can take this ball and we can decide to create this kind of action. So the ball turns around an axis that is vertically on it, and you can turn around, okay? This is transverse, okay? If we take the ball from this way, right, and now imagine that the center is actually cutting the ball from the middle here, and I rotate this way. This is the sway, or the coronal, okay? If I take the ball this way from the side, therefore the center point goes through sideways, and I rotate this way, back and forward, that's the sagittal. Now let me give you an example. I didn't bring the ball, but thankfully I brought my head, so I can use that as a ball. So imagine that imagine that my head is a ball. This is the axis, and I turn this way. This is transverse, okay? Now let's imagine that I take my head from this way, and the center passes through my ears, right? Then I can do, yeah, this sagittal, okay? And then the last one, if I take the head this way, right, and the center is this way, I can do like that. That's coronal. Up and down. Up and down is interesting because it follows a different logic. Like I can imagine in my mind that I want to make my head, that I want to place my head higher in space or deeper in space. So this is more, you need to use a bit of imagination to get the +1, okay? Because it's less mechanical. It's more of an intention of placing the head up or down. We don't do down and up, okay? So it stays at the same. The whole block travels, all right? This concept applies to every other center of my body. Like I can do it in my wrist, this way, or this way. So this one, it would be a sagittal. This one would be a transverse. This one would be a coronal. You can see it? Yeah? I can do it on this center. Let's make a shortcut. We have 3 centers, higher, middle, and low. I can take the higher center and I can feel, which one is this? Transverse. Or I can feel sagittal, or I can feel coronal, right? Same thing I can do in my hips. This one for who does Pilates or yoga is very typical, right? I can feel this. I can feel this. Or I can feel this. So transverse, coronal, sagittal. That applies, my ankle. Everything follows it. It's just the way the world is made, okay? We can, the space is three-dimensional, okay? So you gotta get comfortable with this and you have to feel that every part of your body can do it. Now, in the beginning, we do it in following isolation. So I take my head and I do it like that, right? Then with time, we need to understand how all these centers coordinate together doing this. I'll make a little example. This is very important for all ladies. Like, what do I do with my head? Now, normally the answer is you do nothing, you do with the body, okay? But let's try to clarify what the head could do. And now this is my point of view. If baby has a different point of view, she can share. But it's definitely a combination of the 3 dimensions. So I take my head as a lady, and I decide to have some component of transverse. I can have some component of coronal, and then some component of sagittal. So once I have the percentages of this 3 dimension clear, and what is clear, what feels good to you, and what looks good. We'll find it together with each and every one of you, and you will be able to try it today. If I want to go to the promenade, what do I have to experience? Definitely I need to experience a lot of transverse, right? But then I can still have some coronal, and I can possibly also have some sagittal. And you can see how inevitably that affects the rest of my body, okay? And that's good, because, look at this. Sorry. It doesn't really look good. I did the same thing, but really isolated on the head. So again, with time, you need to understand how all this center can coordinate with each other. So, remember 2 ways, internal and external, right? So if I am just on the spot, whatever I do, let's say that I decide to do transverse, and maybe I can mix with a bit of coronal, and maybe I can also do a little bit of sagittal. As you can see, all these movements I'm doing, I'm still balancing, yeah? If I decide, so I'm not saying, and you see, like all of a sudden it doesn't make sense anymore. I cannot even do it. Like it only works if you keep balancing. When you start over balancing, same thing. So if I want to explore space, I need to keep over balancing as I continue to explore the space a certain way. Now I lost my balance, so that didn't work. And so I keep balancing and I can do all the action I want. only if I keep balancing. So you see when the teachers sometimes say, just don't stop moving, it has to keep moving. You have to keep moving, like don't stop. Don't have that's what it is. You have to keep balancing, not to keep moving or keep running like crazy. You need to keep sensing that under your foot, something's happening at all time. And even if it's little, you need to feel it. One of the examples where I notice the most is in the pictures line. Like pictures line are the worst. You can tell immediately when somebody doesn't get this stuff that, I maybe arrived to the position in my throw and now I just try to do space exploration without any sense of balancing. And you say, how do I balance if I'm just on the one foot? The foot is big enough to can sense something. It's big enough to can feel that there is some balancing going on down there. If you plant yourself in a certain position and then you try to build it, you are going to have some other forces have to take place. And then it comes your rigidity, your stiffness, you're out of balance, you're pulling, you're pushing me, and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So now I ask you a little bit of a help from you, and I would like you to bring up some actions. You can say an action or something that you feel you might have a problem with. Like, is there some action particularly, like, I don't know, I have problem every time I sway, or I have problem when I turn, or I have problem with my CBM, or I have problems with my whatever. Anybody of you wants to share one thing that is particularly hard? Whatever. I have problems when I do brush on my spin turn, or I have some kind of problem. Michael, great.
I have with doing a lot of sway. I can do a little sway, but trying to stretch it further, it breaks.
So you have time doing a lot of sway. You have a hard time doing a lot of sway. So your problem is the quantity. You want to be able to feel a bigger range of sway, of movement, of exploration in the coronal plane. Okay? So when you want to do this and you want to, this I think is a pretty popular kind of problem, so that's good. You need to you need to do the whole list back from the beginning. So you need to start from your posture, balance on point posture, over-balancing in this case, probably. Actually, no, look, let me rephrase that. Go in the non-stepping competition and start feel the balancing right and left, how that can allow you to explore more the coronal plane. And let the whole body be engaged into that, so that you can feel the range. Okay, am I happy enough with this amount? And am I still balancing? Because let's say that you arrive like this and you're done with balancing, now you cannot do more. Then it looks broken. You can only do more as much as you can coordinate it with the balancing that you do it under your feet, that you sense under your feet. Okay? And then you take the part, let's say, I don't know, a natural turn. So once you arrive in this moment, you need to sense kind of the same thing that we were doing on the spot. With that, could you kind of see it? Like, again, the amount depends on two factors. One, your own flexibility. Of course, everybody has a different amount of softness in the muscles. But more important is how, again, you coordinate it with your overbalancing. So you want to sway from the drive to when you close your feet. So make sure you sense every little overbalancing moment while you do space exploration. Probably what happens is that you arrive to the foot too soon. And so with that little amount of overbalance, how could you make a big amount of space exploration to the right? Does it make sense? Okay, anybody wants to say another thing about that? Yeah, Daniel.
Contra check.
Contra check.
Never felt easy.
Beautiful. Yes, actually, that's very, very nice. So in a contra check, for instance, our overbalance, it's tiny by definition because I need to arrive to the middle, to the center balance, and I cannot go further. However, if you could go a little bit further, just to say, right? But what's very important, even there, when we do contra checks, for instance, I feel that the problem is that hitting this 50%, this 50-50 of weight on the two legs, becomes a moment of stop. If it does, then in that moment you're not supposed to do any space exploration. Or if you do, you go off balance. So even though we need to reach the 50%, which anyway, allow 60-40, all right? Just to allow a little bit more. You need to sense a continuity from your going in and your going out. Because if there is a moment in which you stay and you try to project, then it's finished, right? So, for instance, now I don't remember when you have do you have a contra check in your choreography? Yeah, you do? Okay, so there are some times where the contra check lasts for longer. So in that case, even when we are in the middle and it feels that we are done, you can still feel a little bit of rocking. So if you want to increase the shape of that figure, you need to be more aware of that little rocking. Once you're aware of that little rocking, you can feel more space exploration in coordination of that rocking. Can we do that, baby? So, let's say that I go just to the contra check. Now I do the wrong one. I could try and shape, but something's off, okay? So what I do, I get cozy, and I do. Let's feel this rocking moment that's kind of travels from 60-40, right? I don't go all the way there, then we have a problem, right? It's still a contra check, so we gotta be pretty in the middle. But only when I can sense this, then I can start feeling that I can reach for more. Okay? Thank you very much. Very nice. So again, now whatever question you will give me later, the answer is going to be more or less the same. Find the overbalance in that figure, feel it, get to know it, get to feel comfortable with it, and then decide how you can make it more rich with your space exploration. Most of the time, you want to make it rich with your movement, but there is nothing there happen. So again, remember, it's like, well, I wanted to say it's like cryptocurrency. There is nothing down there, all right? So that's the first example. Bet on something real, right? And the real thing in your dancing is your balance. That's the real movement. The real movement comes from the balancing. Then there is the evolution of overbalancing. That's the real deal. Then you understand how to add and make it look better and more rich and stuff like that. Now, the last thing, oh my gosh, it was very long, okay. The last thing is that you need to be aware is that as a space exploration, as I said, has the internal and the external way of interpreting it, right? Internal is when you coordinate it only with the balancing, right? External is when you coordinate it with the way you travel around. There is also another thing to be aware of. I can feel my space exploration as total body. So my whole body commits to a certain space exploration. Or it can be different with different parts of the body. Here it gets a little bit complicated, and this is the part that we will discuss when we go in the rotation as a correction and the coordination against isolation. For now, I want you to feel the total body engaging into a space exploration. And remember, that doesn't mean it's one thing only, because I told you, you already have a lot to coordinate. You need to coordinate your overbalance in space and your space exploration. But later on, we will have to coordinate our other things. I just want to show you one so that you can understand. And we'll delve in it later on. But I could decide, for instance, that I want balancing. I want to do balancing just with my middle center. And I want to allow the rest of other centers to follow that. So look, I could feel that because of the overbalancing of this point, the higher center and the lower center are doing actually a kind of an opposite reaction. So this is usually explained as counter rotations. And I'm sure that many of you have experienced something like that. What's the deal with that? Again, all the time. Is that then the students start to work on the two centers that in this case are doing like that. So I'm working on coordinating that, but I forget that that only happens because there was one center that was overbalancing in a certain direction, and then naturally the other two react in an opposite way. So again, I show you. I could do, let's say, total body, right? So total body overbalancing right and left. And then I could do, I only focus on the middle point, allowing the other two center to react. Like imagine there is a thread that pulls the other two centers in this opposite way. And we can talk about many cases like this. This is the most common one, but it happens also back and forward. Like I could decide to overbalance, to balance back and forward, or I could decide to balance with the middle point, creating almost a sort of an arching because of the two center reacting different, or maybe in smooth, I could do the opposite. I overbalance so much in the back that I allow the other two centers to actually rotate inwards. So you see what I'm trying to bring you, from the very most simple action to the more complicated, but still following a path that is pretty organized. So this last part for today, we will not try. We will just try to coordinate space exploration in many different ways with your balancing and overbalancing. Before we go into execution, is there any question? Was that clear? John.
Should I say the balancing is more of coordination than the
Yeah, I would say so.
ability?
I think I understand your question. Like when you do balancing, there is no coordination. You need to feel the whole body balancing. Yeah? And then as you do this, you can start. Is that what you meant? I'm not sure I get the question.
It requires very good coordination. I think it's more like the space exploration is training us to be more coordinated.
More coordinated, yes, yeah, of course. And coordination has many different ways. That's why I said you can, for today, I want you to coordinate your whole body, right? So if we say coronal, the whole body is coronal, right? So we try the whole thing. But then we can discover new type of coordination in which I might explore different space with different parts of the body, creating what we can then experience as, a very articulated kind of work. Yeah, does it answer the question? We'll do that a little bit later. Today we try to engage the whole body. Some other questions? Jim, I think you had one.
So just like in dancing, I always like to think things in a simple manner.
Right.
You have a lot of real complex thoughts here. But everything kind of sums down to, no matter what kind of shape that you're trying to achieve, it's really all about the balance. I mean, if you had to have a common denominator in everything,
Right.
is what am I trying to achieve? Does it feel like I can't maintain balance and something's wrong?
Exactly. It goes to the very first page that I canceled, right? The order is balance, posture and frame, balancing, and space exploration. So there is a lot of balance going on in the first part. Space exploration is very much there's the spice that you give to that.
And then we didn't really touch on it today, but the next dimension then is this with your partner too. Is now you're maintaining the balance when you're connected.
Exactly, because
Probably another seminar.
yeah, no, that's the part when we will talk about man and woman, right? Again, you said it very right. You said it beautifully. We can summarize everything that it has to feel and be in balance. Usually, teacher said two things. It has to be in balance, it has to look beautiful. But let's say that the look beautiful, it could be sort of subjective, all right? So let's start with the balance, okay? But you're right, everything has to be back into balance and balancing, so that then the space exploration is already our art. In a way, it's already our art. There are some stuff of space exploration that are needed to do for actually being in balance. Like, let's say, if I do a natural turn, I cannot just decide, okay, you know, I'm going to sway the other way. You cannot do it because for that movement, you need that to be in balance. But beside these little basic principles that engage space exploration to be in balance, all the rest is your own interpretation, is your own art. So then you have freedom to finally say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And believe me, it gets there. There is where you want to be. If that's your problem, then it means you guys almost got it. When I have lesson with you and I find myself to say, okay, let's see how we explore space in this preparation step before we actually take off. Every time I do it with you, I think it's something that I have to find out in the first place. Like I don't come to you with a straight idea, okay, the preparation step, it has to be like this. Then you will feel it, and that's why you see people that do preparation step in a different way, right? So again, you said very right, is the balance is the base of everything. How you deal with it and how you use it and how you put other stuff on top that makes a difference. Some other questions? Daniel.
So if I understand correctly, as you're exploring space, you're naturally putting pressure on the other elements that come above it, like balancing, posture, and home point. And if you explore space too much, you can eventually break one of those ones at the top. For balance, it's more intuitive because if you break your balance, you fall over. For posture, I feel that oftentimes as a beginner, especially, you end up trying to do, say, more sway or more space exploration by effectively cheating your posture.
Exactly.
How do you, I guess this is different dancer to dancer, but how do you realize internally when it is that space exploration to be trying to do has damaged your posture?
Right. Well, internally, as a student, it's very difficult to say because that's why you need a teacher and a guide that most of the time can see that there is something you are holding. There is somewhere in that moment you are holding something. And then it's the duty of the teacher to try and realize at which point you were not coordinated with all your balancing and space exploration stuff. Which decision in the way was not a good decision, right? When with experience, you happen to feel it in yourself. Like I give you an example, guys, this is for all of you. I do Pilates with the reformer, and sometimes I do an exercise of some kind, and I notice that even there is no need, I notice maybe my right arm holds a bit, because it feels like it participates to that exercise. Maybe I'm pushing something with my leg, but then I spot myself being tense on my arm, and I purposely say, oh, no, wait, I have to let go. That's self-awareness. That's where I would like to bring you on, where you can tell yourself, maybe you do, I don't know, a natural turn and you feel a bit of balance and you maybe start to rigid the left side just to make sure that you don't fall. So that's you have to go back and say, okay, I did that, oh, not good. So let's try again, and I don't have that. And then if you are unable to balance it, that means it needs a little bit of a research, right? So you need to coordinate this process with the teacher. And with time, you'll be able actually to spot yourself doing some weird stuff that you say, why am I even doing that? Okay?